where that school exit entrance is.
So what happens on the school is a little bit out of the context of this project, but I do know the school district is in with the, they've done the early learning center is a new piece, and there are frontage improvements that are being made as part of their development, and we will be incorporating their work into our.
What is frontage? What are you talking about?
What's that?
I don't understand what you mean by frontage.
Frontage improvements, so
Yeah.
frontage improvements would be, so as part of their development, so anytime a development occurs in the city, they're required to do certain improvements in the right of way, so along the fronts of their street, so oftentimes that means sidewalks in neighborhoods where there aren't any, widening, so you'll see where development goes in and out, where new houses are built and the road may be a little bit wider. Same thing would happen with the school district, so they'll be putting a path, a 13-foot trail or path, or paved on the, on the north side of their property, along and extending the curb out with nice. It'll save most of the trees that are there today, but the path will be behind that. And then I can't recall what the frontage improvements are down on Meridian itself, but they will be putting sidewalk.
They're not finished yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think we could follow up with the school, because if it's queuing back or affecting the corridor, that's, I mean, we're showing that as part of our.
It is, there's no, like, so there's a gate right there at the school, but all the students are outside, like, you couldn't, I mean, you can't, drive through the, I mean, there is a gate there and people open that to go in and out for like deliveries, but, I can't imagine that they're gonna open that gate where all those, and really, the reason there's so many cars, I have a neighbor, you see, I live on that Densmore Street right there, right? Point to that street. Yep, on the other side though, right there, yep, I live on that cul-de-sac. I had a neighbor, they don't go to elementary school anymore, who drove their kids to school every single day because they were so afraid of 175th.
Yeah.
Now, they've already aged out, and by the time you finish this project, we'll all have aged out. But, you could change that, again, are you ready, Alex?
Yes.
If you made 175th 25 miles an hour, people would feel safer walking their kids to school. They would.
But they feel safer with better sidewalks too?
Of course, but you are not going to be able to do that for 10 years, so it's ridiculous to even talk about it.
There is a school at 30 miles.
It's 20, yeah, it is, but they come down the hill, and the school zone doesn't start there, and that it's.
So it's signage and other things we could use.
Well, and we got the your speed sign zones up. But we have students who come to school at 8 o'clock for before care, right? We have students who leave after the after those short 25-minute windows where the flashing is happening, but it's not enforced. And I think it's not enforced, and I think if you look at the, and I don't know if you're gonna present the traffic data, but how fast people are driving on that street on a regular basis, you'll see that lots of people are going 50 miles an hour regularly on 175th. Who's gonna let their kid walk with no sidewalk on that road? They're going to drive their kids to school because they're terrified their kids are gonna be killed.
And I just wanted to say also that Callie brings the views of the PTSA with her.
Yeah, I'm frustrated that I'm not on your like previous list. I'm a homeowner on that road. I volunteered at PTSA. I've had the whole entire city council 3 years ago down to my street to stand there during school, and I'm not on any email list. You know how I got this? Is from Cynthia. I email Kendra Dudinsky regularly.
So with that in mind, since you do live in, we did send emails out to all the tax parcels and the residents along the whole corridor.
And there were signs.
But if you were missed, I want to make sure we correct that so that we talk with Alex here and make sure we got your address on there. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to putting the signs out, advertising the open house on the corridor and doing the mailing and talking to the school, and it sounds like maybe at the PTSA.
You're right, it's easy to miss
Yeah.
information. I know that I miss a lot. I put out a lot of information and I know people miss it.
Yeah, so that's why we're here, so, and not now looking at you.
Yeah, if
You
anyone-
can spread the word, since you're
Yes,
part of PTSA,
yes.
that's cool. I would see what you were saying. You know, some of the things that we could be talking about as a team are extending the school zone time.
Right, because-
Enforcement, I will say enforcement, it requires enforcement, which requires enforcers, which you know, so that
Well,
requires
could
more
We'd have
resources.
traffic, we'd have traffic ticket
Right,
cameras.
so so these are things that we're hearing and we're writing down and thinking about, and I'm telling you how this also works.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be interesting to see, you know, exactly how many seconds it saves somebody to drive up North 175th from the freeway to the top of the
1
hill, whether
minute.
they're going.
It saves,
Yeah.
hold on here, I can tell you exactly.
It's minuscule, it's
Yes.
minuscule.
It is,
It's-
so I don't know
what
why
it-
we
what
can't
it-
lower
what
the
it-
speed
it's-
limit.
it's
1
human.
minute and 36 seconds.
Thank you, Cal.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're trying to say?
Well, since we're taking public comments here, I would like to say that I think lowering the speed limit from 35 to 25 is a bit much. Seattle lowered their arterial speed limit from 30 to 25, and I absolutely hate it. I think, 30 would be, good, and I think the problem is the people that speed,
Yes, enforcement.
and.
But if you look at, so evidence-based, right, if you look at the difference in survivorship from 45 miles an hour in a pedestrian accident to 40 to 35 to 30 to 25, the amount of survivorship is so great that it is not worth that 5 miles an hour. And if it was you behind the wheel that hit a kid because they ran out in front of you, you would be so frustrated with the city that they didn't go with an evidence-based safety situation that doesn't save you that much time. And it's just a habit. You have a habit of driving that fast.
So we hear
Right,
you.
less than
Yeah, okay,
two
I'm
minutes.
sorry,
of
okay.
We've got, yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I was gonna go, did we cover this?
That's
Next.
fair.
So, no, we hear you, and I know you wrote a lot down.
Yeah.
So, our next steps are to continue to hear you, all of you, in terms of feedback and input from the community. You know, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we've got our basic goals, purpose for the project, but we're always looking for feedback. That's our starting point. And our next, I'm looking at Dan, but we're developing the criteria, and we'll be getting feedback on those criteria, because those are the criteria where we develop the concepts and then look at those different concepts and what we're working towards that preferred design concept. Summer, fall 2019, develop alternatives, right? And we'll have another, comparable to the May open house, we'll be having an open house.
We'll go through this whole process again,
Right.
basically 3 times, so the next one will be in fall, I'm gonna say October, November, December timeframe,
Yeah.
at the end of this year. And we will have concepts developed, a multitude of them, and there'll be a wide range of them from, this is the city standard, if we have all the land in the world, to more realistic, here's what fits in the corridor, and making sure we include all the project goals for bicycles, beds, transit, whatnot.
And we can, Constance, come back to the
Yeah.
community group, right, and check in along the way.
So I have an offer. Meridian Park Neighborhood Association has a Facebook page. And so what I would like to offer is that someone from your group take on, posting these individual things, not just like, hey, look at this street and tell me everything that's wrong with it. But, hey, we're considering this particular thing for this particular area. What do you think of it? And I would be very glad to, if you put it as a post on our Facebook page, I can then share it to, the visitor posts don't necessarily get shared to the main page, but I would be very glad to do that. And I would also be glad to then share that to other shoreline Facebook pages.
So what we,
Because there's a lot of people who cannot get out to a meeting.
Yeah.
So Constance, I'm just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Are
I'm
you?
Cynthia.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No.
My apologies. certain elements of the project, like very specific elements of the project you would like
Just like
discuss?
breaking it down in chunks,
Right,
because this was kind of big for somebody to, you know, they can say what their individual issue is with North 175th, but, you know, it was a lot to think about. If you're bringing up, you know, what do you think of, we're gonna change the speed limit, or what do you think of that we're going to, widen the sidewalks in this particular area, or whatever.
We will do that in the next round, right? This first one is really information gathering. You know, here's the blank palette, here's the street that is today, what are the issues you guys are running into? I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis of what we've heard, because we're kind of, this is on the tail end of it, but, you know, sidewalks are important.
This is from the open house.
Yeah, the open house kind of feedback that we've heard in the outline. Bicycles are important, but maybe not here. Landscaping, not so much important. Sight distances are an issue, speeds are a problem, safety on the corridors, critical. The crossing for the children down at, Wallingford, excuse me. Was the key, is there anything else I missed?
sidewalks.
Just sidewalks was the big one. Sidewalks were really important.
Well, you were saying bicycle maybe not important in this arena, but, currently I wouldn't ride my bike unless
Exactly.
I wouldn't try it at all. I go to 185th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at least,
Yeah.
even though I might fall down in a huge crack in that bike lane, there is one.
Yeah. I've kind of of the opinion that, you know, you build it, they'll come.
Yeah.
It's just a little steep coming up, so that's
Yeah,
it's a
I'm
little bit of a
not
challenge.
going up to 15th on my bike, but,
Yeah. But, you know, we need to get people connected to the library. You know,
Yes,
people wanna get
It'll
back and
be
forth.
on the
from
lower
there.
end of that
Yeah.
level.
The only trouble I see with bicycles and arterial is that I'm sorry if anybody's a bicyclist here, but, I have a problem with bicyclists because they tend to, they don't stay in their lane, they go in there. I've never seen one stop at a stop sign for one.
It's because you haven't been following me.
Oh,
I'm a-
you're
I'm
probably-
a rule-
you're the
I'm a
only
rule
one.
follower.
You're the only one, because
I'm a
I've
rule
seen so
follower.
many of them, and I saw,
It's because if I get hit, I wanna be the one to be able to sue, not the car.
good point. But like things like, you know, when Seattle they put that stuff like on Roosevelt Road, they really screwed up Roosevelt. Really screwed up. The traffic is terrible there. They took out parking spaces. The bicyclists are all over the place down there, and it just slows up the traffic tremendously. So it'd be great, instead of bringing the bicyclists over, my thought was you put it over one street to a more of a residential street, the bicyclists would go down that way, and leave the vehicular ones on the arterial one. It just made a lot more sense, but
Right.
they didn't expect.
That's a legitimate idea.
There's just not a connection to the east side, except at 175th.
And there's some challenges of getting connections made back and forth
Yeah.
across the freeway.
I will say this, as I mentioned, you just raise your hand.
It's okay.
Okay.
You can finish.
And I see you over there, so, we are trying to provide options, so we will be looking at bike travel on the corridor. It can be inside or outside the curve, but that is something that will be, you know, safe travel. You can model the right way to be traveling on this.
I'll just have everybody ride behind me, and if I stop, they don't have to stop.
Yeah, but that's, I
That's the problem, that's the problem with the traffic, and it's like there's a bicyclist going 5 miles an hour and there's traffic backed up for 3 blocks.
Well, I have to take the lane if I don't actually have a bike lane.
And, you know,
So I
and
have to
what
get
we
in the
found
traffic.
on every corridor is so many different perspectives on cycling.
Yeah.
From there's nobody that uses it, to I use it all the time, to I don't wanna travel on the street, to I have to be on the street, to, so it's really hard to balance the bike. And it's something that we do wanna grow as a city, so this will be one of the, definitely the conversations that.
Yeah, this will
that
be a
will be-
conversation later, but I also do a lot of freeway traveling. I live just around the corner on Meridian and 175th, on the 178th side. To get on the freeway in the mornings, I'm not the one that travels down to 145th. I'm sitting there in the way backed up, on-ramp, waiting, the traffic is metered all day long almost. I don't know what the real good time to get on the freeway is, cause we're all sitting there with meter traffic. So yeah, I don't know if I'd ride my bike along that.
So I just wanted to say that I think that the city messaging is important, that, as a city, we've decided that, bikes are important, and it might not be for everyone, but that we're gonna share the roads with bikes. I think all of this needs to be a little stronger, positive messaging, but if they try to, and I know this was in a previous plan for 175th, is to, because of those bulkheads, is to reduce the lanes. I just wanna say, that cannot happen, because there's 30,000 cars on that road. They're already backed up right now during rush hour. When that light is red at Meridian, I can't cross my street Densmore because the cars are backed up past my road headed south. We can't reduce the amount of traffic.
I hear you there on that, yeah.
And I would love to say we could, but we can't with these apartments.
Yeah.
I mean, we need bike lanes so people can use those, but I can't imagine that could be, I'm on that street every single day, walking, biking, driving. I can't imagine if you tried to reduce it. I mean,
I agree with you, that's not on the table.
okay, good, because that sounds so scary.
No, this is not a road diet project, so, yeah.
You don't call
We're
it
using
road
this
diet,
being a
but-
little-
Yeah, I don't wanna say
Reduce
that.
capacity.
So my comment is more along the lines of, trying to get, resident feedback and communication to residents and all that. And I just wanted to remind everybody that right now Shoreline is going through a tremendous amount of change. And so as citizens, we're getting invitations, what seems like every other day, to come and give our feedback about something that's gonna happen that impacts us greatly. And we just can't keep up with it. And on top of that, there's just a tremendous amount of grief in this town, which is people are just mad because they're grieving the changes. So I'm just asking that you keep that in mind when you're thinking about your communications, and if you're disappointed about how many people show up to meetings and things like that. This is just from a resident's perspective. It's just never ending. And having to come and go to city council and make comment all the time, trying to save trees or whatever it is. It's a lot.
So I think I had one more slide.
If I might quickly, just on behalf of those who in previous meetings have commented on this also, if you walk from Ashworth, and I live down Ashworth, and go up the street to Trader Joe's, a favorite little hike, that sidewalk is kind of wide, that's nice, but boy, you're wondering how quickly you could scramble up that rockery if some guy were drunk and coming across the curb.
Yes.
And that curb isn't enough to stop anybody beyond a Boy Scout. If you could come up with some kind of clever and aesthetic fencing or something or other that would really provide a barrier there all the way down to the school, because even I shudder to see kids after Ashworth. The sidewalk is even less, much less, and they're taken there in the dark and it's raining and the cars are going down the hill, and we encourage people to go all the way down to 171st and go down that little hills, that little thing that comes on the south side of the school. But yeah, walking along there is something that makes you think whether or not you have a will.
Yeah, most kids are on the big sidewalk. Hardly ever do it when I'm going to work and stuff. Hardly ever do I see anybody on the north.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because they drive because they're terrified, which blocks all of this traffic, right? All of this traffic, because they're terrified of going.
Yeah, I will say this too, just so you're aware. We're on the corridor. Everybody in the city is, so we see it, and we're trying to do what we can. Yeah, it's.
I've been having emails about this since 2014, and
Yeah.
nothing has changed really. I mean, aside from your speed signs, which I made them put in.
That's the design. That's why we're doing the design. That's why we got the grant. Gotta have the grant. As you mentioned, there's lots of growth, lots of mourning, some people opportunity, change, good,
Yeah, there's
bad,
excitement and grief at the
depending on
same
your
time.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're trying to do a lot. We don't have a big staff. We have more than we can do. So we're, you know, Kendra's one of my team, and I know she's trying really hard. She works all the time. So I guess just bear with us. We see it. I got
That's
kids.
great.
We see it, so.
Yeah, our neighborhood particularly has just so many families.
Yeah, so it's, you know, so I guess what I'm saying is we hear you, and this is good, and what we're gonna take the feedback, we're, you know, gonna try to move and make this happen as quickly as we can, given the resources we have, given the grants, it's really competitive for grants, so that's how we're funding the project.
We could get funding for sidewalks like Seattle did for their school sidewalks with trip ticket cameras. We could do that.
There's been funding already provided for part of 175th by group.
Only for the
group.
planning.
Different group, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so,
only the
so
planning.
that's, so anyway, I'm just letting you know, so that's, I guess, just be also aware. We're seeing this too, we hear what you're saying, we appreciate it. So Don Ranger is the project manager. Couldn't be here tonight. I think what I'd like to ask y'all to add is the website address, not just his phone number.
Yes,
Cause I'd rather you guys go to the website before you call Don for information. But he is a project manager, and he is very, interested in hearing input. I think what we'll do though is continue to collect this input. I'm also going to ask how we're collecting contact information, so I don't know if we have that, are you keeping a running list of people who wanna be part of an email
That's
list?
correct, yes.
Okay, so if you,
And I think you can also sign up for email updates online,
yeah,
and, I checked, these, slides are on the website as well, and, if it's okay with you, I could forward you the URL, and if you wanna circulate it to the group, we could do that too.
Is there much of a actual right-of-way to work with beyond the road as we see it now?
That's one of the biggest challenges, you know, there are a number, there's quite a bit.
actually, let's go to a different one, see if that would help.
Yeah, there's about, I think it's 90 feet between Meridian and I-5, and then it varies from 80 down to about 60 as we get between Wallingford and Ashworth. That's probably our most constricted, and if you go down, if you drive down there or look through it, I mean, there's driveways that are very steep. So can you imagine trying to put sidewalks on the side of that, what the impact is to the residents that own those homes? So that is probably our biggest challenging area. So.
And isn't, the south side of 175th at the corner of Ashworth, isn't that, zoned for, isn't that been upzoned to there's a single family residence there, but I think that's been zoned for something larger.
That I'm not familiar with.
Oh,
but
okay.
familiar with,
I thought
yeah.
that was somewhere else, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so, that's outside the light rail
I think
zone,
that's
zone.
one,
I thought I saw it on there.
I won't comment because I'm not sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Holly, 175th and where?
Ashworth.
175th and Ashworth.
On the south.
Yeah, I thought
Southeast
on
corner.
that
East
south,
corner, east
this,
corner,
yes.
I'm not.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
older
There's
couple
no
who
transit.
lived there.
Yeah, I thought I saw that was zoned for a high,
That would
more
not surprise
occupancy.
me.
So
And
I-
just off of there.
I know that you had other things on your agenda, so are there other questions or comments? We'll be back.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming.
Thanks.
And listening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Are you guys there? This is yours. Oh, this is yours.
Alex.
That's Alex's.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay, thanks. everyone.
People want to. I'll go pick up.
And keep up the fight.
All right, so for the last part of the
Talking
meeting, we have got Constance Perini, who is the Neighborhoods Coordinator, and she is going to talk about the current paperwork and process for closing your block as well as just having a block party. And then, and being in the running for being able to have a police car or a fire engine or an aid car come, the kids just really love that. And also it's an opportunity to speak with an officer about safety things. And then also we have this wonderful packet that has a template for an invitation for block parties. We've got tips and tricks on games that can be played, and how to do that, and how to organize a potluck, just everything that you need to know about throwing a block party. And if you don't have one on your street currently, I just really encourage you to think very seriously about being the generator of that, because we have got 2 blocks, North 172nd between I-5, and we have a dead end there, between Meridian and I-5. Our 2 blocks are just tight. The neighbors are really tight, and we have got a block party every year, and we also have a cookie exchange in the wintertime. So we have those 2 times that we connect. And the way that our neighborhood got connected at first was that we had a flood. So we kind of came together in disaster. And I really would hate it for everybody's neighborhood, who doesn't have a block party, to have that be the impetus for connecting. So if you have any concerns, or you're feeling like, oh, it's that's for somebody else to do, I just ask you to consider you're the one.
Do you have a list of the ones that are already in place?
Constance knows about
Okay.
those.
We just opened on June 1st, and
Every year they're different.
and have any of you organized a block party before? Oh, great, wonderful. I might ask you for some tips too, because
I organized 2 because I was on a corner, so people asked me to be in both of them.
Oh, good for you.
I
That's a
was
good way
ahead
to
of
do it.
one and active in the other one.
What Cynthia just said is really true. I had not had anything, or we hadn't had anything on our block in the 11 years that we had lived there already. And when I started doing this, it's like, we have to have our own block party. And I encourage you, if you can, to talk to a few neighbors and see if they're willing to pitch in with you, because it makes it a lot more fun. And it didn't happen the first year. We live on a very, very long block. We've got about 44 houses on our block. And it's been a goal every year to try to extend our reach. We started kind of in the middle and got people who we knew the most to start coming. And then every year it's like, bring the person to the east or to the west of you. And so every year it gets a little bit bigger. But I have to tell you, it's the coolest thing. My partner was like, why are we doing this? Why are we putting out a table and having a little ice cream social? Nobody's gonna come. It was so cool. At 7 o'clock, everybody started to pour down the street. And the best thing that happened was we would see people at their mailboxes or driving around, but we didn't know what houses they lived in. So the value of doing it really close to where you live is really great. Some neighborhoods have great big block parties that bring people from all over. That's wonderful. Richmond Beach does that every year, but they don't see each other coming in and out of their houses that way. And that's where you really start developing the relationships that are really crucial to keeping things going and keeping your neighborhood safe. I like to think of National Night Out as not just crime prevention. It's really a way to enhance community. And we all know that if push comes to shove, if the earth shakes, it's going to be our neighbors who will need to check on, or they will check on us. So developing those relationships is really helpful. There are several ways to do this, and I'm going to suggest, and I don't know if this was the case for you, but keeping things as simple as possible, I think, is really important all the way through this process. If you don't need to close your street, don't. If you can do it in a front yard, we do ours in our driveway, and that way we're not out on the right of way, we're not creating a traffic hazard, and nobody's worried about letting their kids run around because it's safe where we are. But if you don't have that option, then do think about closing your street, because that is not, you have to get a permit, but it's not all that difficult. And I'll walk you through that process. Yes?
I had a question about, so one thing that I didn't mention is that Meridian Park Neighborhood Association has an umbrella insurance policy
I was gonna talk about
that
that.
covers block parties.
Mhm.
But do they cover it if it's, you have it in your driveway or if you have it in your,
No, you don't need insurance coverage for that.
okay.
Yeah.
But what if somebody wanted that because they didn't have, homeowners insurance that was that comprehensive?
It's not for private property,
It's
it's
not
for
for private
city
property.
property.
So it has to be on city property, on a street,
Mhm.
or a little park in your
Yep.
area. Okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's a good question. The way this works, and I'll switch into that quickly, is if you wanna close your street, it's a permit process, you would do it no matter what you were closing your street for. And the cost of doing it, if you don't have the right kind of, if you don't have coverage, is close to $1,000. And we wanna make sure that people can have these parties. And a long time ago, the city decided that the best way to do that was to insure the neighborhood associations. So every neighborhood association in Shoreline gets an insurance policy that's renewed every year. And when you fill out your permit, and you go through our permitting department, and I'll back that up in just a second, you will get, if you're using the street or the right of way, and the right of way is actually owned, a lot of us think that we own all the space in front of our house. Nope, it's actually city property, and that's why it does need to be insured if you're doing it out like by your mailbox. And when you fill out your permit, you will be told who to go to, and in this case, you've got your 2 signers right here. They have to be official signers for this to work, and they will sign off on your paperwork. And in effect, they're saying that what you're doing is a neighborhood association recognized event. And it doesn't have to be just on National Night Out, it could be anytime through the summer, or I got a call last week from a neighborhood association member who had been approached. There had been a sudden death on their block, and their neighbors wanted to close off the block to have a celebration of his life. And it wasn't National Night Out, it wasn't really specifically a safety kind of block party. Could he sign off? Yes, he could. I mean, we totally support that kind of thing because it builds community. So to back this up a little bit, there are two bits of paperwork that are important. Whether you are doing it in your backyard or you are closing your street, we encourage you to register with the city, and that is done online, or you can print out if you don't have access. I actually have the permit forms here printed out, but you could call me and I could print it out for you and send you a copy, and then you can mail it back to us. The value in doing this is that the city then knows that you're doing a block party, and there are benefits to you for that because you'll get a little gift packet from us either the day of the event, or this is just for National Night Out, or the day sometime it will end up on your porch, and it will be a little bag of handouts for your guests on safety, on crime prevention, on preparedness, disaster preparedness. Anything that your neighborhood association might want you to know about can go in there as well. And you'll get a little host gift and something to entertain kids. So it's just a little starter pack for you as you organize your party. The other thing that will happen is when you fill out your registration form, you can say whether you would like to have a visit by the police or the fire department. And as Cynthia mentioned, it's a hit with kids, and kids big and small. In a neighborhood a couple of years ago, a ladder truck pulled up, and they put the ladder up, and a firefighter went all the way to the top, and there were more middle-aged men standing there cheering than there were children. They'd gone off. It took a long time for this guy to climb up, and they'd lost interest, so they were off doing other things, and everybody was standing there going, wow, that's amazing. So that kind of thing can happen right on your block if the fire department has ingress and egress. We ask you to fill out whether you'd like this or not. The fire department reviews it, and if they know that they can't get a big truck into a cul-de-sac and get out safely, and this has happened at a lot of parties, they'll get called out.
and they need to be able to exit very
Mm.
quickly. So they know the city, they're like, oh, this block would be okay, this block isn't gonna work as well, we'll see if we can send an aid car or something that's a little more nimble. So, we say it's a lottery, and to a degree it is a lottery, but it's mostly the fire department really looking at the map and figuring out what works for them, depending on where their stations are as well.
People
Yes.
really do like that stuff. I used to live in Edmonton. I was McGruff the crime dog for 6 years in Edmonton. And National Night Out was a busy night. We hit so many blocks, so many block places. It was fun. A lot of fun. Kids adored it.
Yeah, it really is amazing, and I've discovered, we had 76 parties registered in Shoreline last year. And it's high touch, we managed to get to most of those, and we being a combination of staff who go out and just talk to people and hear what's going on their block, and police, our community outreach officer made it to 31 parties last year. She was very smart, she timed it so that she was heading out with our new canine unit. The minute the dog showed up, it was a lot like a fire truck. And she could kind of like, okay, my job's done, I'm going to the next one. I made it to about 12 and then kind of fell over dead and was like, how did she do this? But we do manage to get to a lot of them, and it's a great way for the community to get to know not only the police and firefighters, but city staff, so that, we tend to not have, I'm out in public all the time, so people know me, but a lot of our folks aren't. So it's a really great way, and we very strategically, if people are upset about a traffic issue, our traffic engineer goes to those parties and puts on our armor and so we really do try to address whatever is going on as locally as possible. So that's the registration process. Now, if you want to close your block, there is, I actually will walk you through this. I won't pull it up right now, but there's a checklist, and I understand this is confusing for people, although it's gotten to be a little bit easier. There's a fillable form. There is a checklist for what you need to turn in, and it doesn't come to me. I deal with the registrations, but this goes to our permitting department, because they have to actually process this as a permit, even though you're not going to be writing a check for $997, $995. So you need the application, which is the description, date, and time and event of the event, and your contact information. The submittal fee, which is waived. Neighbor notification flyers, and this has to be filed, and this could be part of the issue that people have. There is if you're closing your block, you are obligated to let your neighbors know you're going to be doing that. So on your invitation form, I have some of these if anybody wants to take them. There is a sample of how you can do this, and you can just basically duplicate the information. National Night Out Neighborhood Potluck, you're invited to the address, the date, the time, meet your neighbors, share food, and have some fun. And then it tells you what, if you're gonna do a potluck, what people need to bring. And then it has the really important piece for permitting, the road closure. And so it will say something like Home Street North will be closed on August 2nd between North 198th and North 199th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. to allow for setup and cleanup. For all of our safety, please plan not to drive on Home Street during this closure. And then you put a contact name and number. So if somebody wants to call and say, but I just have to get into my driveway, you can talk to them and figure out how that could happen. So that is a really important piece, and that is going to be one of the things that they will look at when you submit this permit.
Do you ever get some Scrooges on the street that say, hell no, I don't want my street blocked off?
We do sometimes, but they actually, in this case, don't have a say in it. I mean, I suppose that he could come in and protest at City Hall, but if their neighbors have gotten the permit and it's legal, it's going to happen. Yeah, there are other things that we have to pay attention to. If there's going to be any modification, when a few years ago, the Parkwood Neighborhood Association did some murals on the streets, on the roads, and they had to get everybody's permission up and down the block. And in a couple cases got up to the last person who was the Scrooge, who said no. I don't want something bright outside, no, I just wanna see the rainfall. So they had to start all over and go to another neighborhood, and eventually they got everybody to sign off, so, but no, this is different. Certificate of liability insurance, you don't have to worry about that, your neighborhood has provided it and it is on file. The other thing that's really important is a map or a drawing, and they need 2 copies of this. On 8.5 by 11 paper, you don't have to do a huge rendition of what your neighborhood looks like. This is where Google Maps is really, really helpful. You can get it to print out the basic layout of your neighborhood. You want to indicate which direction is north, put a north arrow on it. Indicate the streets to be closed and the location of the road closure signs. So if you're closing off just like on my block, it would be at each end, and I would show that on the map, and then show, you know, from where to where it's closed. If there's a detour route required, you need to indicate that on the map. If there is a detour route required, if it's a really busy street, there is a possibility that permitting will not allow you to close it, because it would be too dangerous, not just for you, but for any emergency equipment that needed to get through. And this is something the city takes on. You would have to do this ordinarily. Every time there's a block closed or a street closed, the fire, police departments, and Metro have to be notified, whether or not it's actually on a bus route. They need to know. So the city takes responsibility once you've filed your permit for letting them know. And that's the last part. City of Shoreline will provide notification to relevant agencies based on your application. The application is pretty straightforward. It asks for the event address, and you would probably give, if you're doing it right in front of your home, you would give your home address. The neighborhood association, you would obviously check Meridian Park, your name, and with all the information we need to contact you, an alternate contact, and that is very helpful. And this is where you get, you know, either a spouse to help, or, you know, somebody who lives in the house, or you go and you recruit your neighbors and say, hey, I'm willing to make the brownies if you'll be an alternate contact with me. Then you give the information about the event date, start time and end time, approximate number of people you expect. I know that's never easy to figure out, but just make a ballpark. Streets to be closed, the date of the street closure, time it would start, time it would end for that, and what it is. Is it a block watch party? Is it an ice cream social? Is it a large community event? Other. So, Kristen who called me last week would probably put celebration of life in the other. There's a hold harmless you sign, which is just basic legalese that you probably have to sign for all kinds of things, saying that you understand the city is not responsible if something were to happen. There's more information in here for the general terms and conditions for the event, and then the city manager's policy fee waivers for the block parties, which is what you would be taking advantage of. It just gives you the official, this is why this happens. Piece of paper in here with the Shoreline fire logo. Do you want the fire department to come visit? Yes or no? Again, the sample of the flyer that you will have to distribute. And then, as I said, 2 copies of the map. And I can pass these out, and if anybody wants to take it as a sample, this is just a sample map downloaded from the internet and things marked out. You don't have to do it electronically, you can just take a pen and show exactly. But be sure to orient it to north. If you have done this in the past, the good thing is this paperwork is probably still on file somewhere in the city, so you don't have to do it every year. Once you get in with Lucinda Clark, who's the permit technician, she'll recognize you and pull out your paperwork from last year and walk you through it again, so that you make sure that that's all covered. If you're doing this, again, register, do both, so that we can get those packets out to you, so that we know. I mean, I get information from Lucinda, but there are a few more questions on that registration form. And that, again, is completely online. It's pretty simple, it just takes a few minutes to fill out. So here are copies of the checklists and the permits if anybody would like to take those tonight. And then, as Cynthia mentioned, this was really fun. I put together a little packet last year for people on how to do this. Again, it will remind you, 1, register your party, 2, submit a permit. And then, this is kind of the fun part. This covers, first of all, why do this? Have fun, meet your neighbors, increase the sense of belonging in your neighborhood, share crime prevention and safety information, create a neighborhood contact list. That has been the most useful thing to us. I just put out a yellow pad. I didn't have time to create a form. It could be just so simple, and have people put their name, their address, and whatever contact information they're willing to share with you. And if you are organizing this party and you feel inclined, put that together as a list and send it out to everybody so that they have each other's. Last year we had a cat out to our house in the middle of the night and didn't realize it for a little bit. At 5:30 in the morning when we realized it, I activated our neighborhood list. At 6 o'clock that morning, there were 3 people from the neighborhood out helping us look. So it's really helpful. And then think about what kind of party you want to plan and how much time you have to organize it. Be realistic. If you're gonna bring out an ice chest with some popsicles in it, that is totally fine. Know that that's your capacity. Last year, I worked with a woman who had never done this before, and she was bound and determined she was going to have bouncy houses right on the street, which is actually a great idea for them. She was thinking about bringing some ponies in, and she had these grand plans, and I'm like, I don't want to burst your bubble, but how much money do you have for this? And she goes, my husband said I can spend $50 on it. And go to Fred Meyer and get ice cream.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, think about what is realistic for you. And she had a great time, a really great time. She actually called me and thanked me and said, I would have been so worried about kids falling out of the bouncy house. And it's like, yeah, I would have been too. And so would your neighborhood association. How can you create a welcoming event for everybody? And this is really as important as anything. Get your invitations out early and to everybody on your block. They don't need to be elaborate. Think really simple things. And if you're doing the closure, that template is simple and straightforward. If you have an active email list, send messages then. And if your neighborhood has a Facebook page, which some do, create an event. You can just go into Facebook, do the event, and that'll get to everybody. Get the word out in as many ways as you can and be prepared to do some follow-up closer to the date. That, for me, has meant actually going and knocking on doors. We have a few neighbors who are elderly and wouldn't get an email, probably wouldn't, they've come to recognize me, so they'll open the door. But you know, just be really sensitive to what people's threshold is. Plan activities that will encourage people to get to know each other, and there are lots of suggestions in this, and I really encourage you to take it. Think of what children will enjoy if you're going to have children there, and make sure that there are opportunities for people with differing abilities to participate. Provide name tags and ask everybody to wear one if they're comfortable with that. Set up a space for kids to create their own name tags. The sign-in sheet I mentioned. One of the people who does a neighborhood event every year, it's not on National Night Out, but in addition to the neighborhood list with names, he's also, this has been very cool, he's kept the names of family members and birthdays. And he and his wife send birthday cards to people. It's pretty remarkable, and it's a small cul-de-sac, it's very, very close. And so if you wanted to develop that kind of relationship, you can. Again, that's not a prerequisite. As Shoreline diversifies, we're finding that we have multiple languages spoken. And if you can create the simplest flyer possible and use descriptive illustrations, like for if you're doing an ice cream social, a picture of an ice cream, a bowl of ice cream, will speak volumes, and just keep the text really short. If you have bi or multilingual neighbors, ask if they would feel comfortable translating the flyer and or contacting neighbors with limited English proficiency who speak the same language. May take more than one invitation for a new neighbor to feel encouraged and comfortable enough to attend, so make a point of following up in the weeks leading to the event. If you're blocking off the street for the day, diagrams about street parking changes may be helpful to include on your flyers, which you'll have to do. Be welcoming and opening with your expectations of neighbors coming from different cultural backgrounds. Not all cultures shake hands upon meeting or answer questions about their jobs. Try a smile first and just follow the lead. Neighbors with limited English skills may understand more than they can speak. Use accessible language when you welcome them and show that you're glad to see them at the event. Again, that smile makes all the difference. Take time to learn each other's names. And, you know, people really appreciate it when you learn to pronounce or make an effort to pronounce their names. That's huge. And don't feel embarrassed if you have to ask a few times. Somebody is going to respond to your genuine interest in getting to know them. So don't, I know I always do that too. It's like, oh my gosh, you didn't get it the first time. Should I ask again? Ask again. And just, really say it a few times to them and make sure you get it right. Lots of people don't drink alcohol, eat pork or other meat. Be aware of special cultural and religious diets, and think about if you're having a potluck, ask them to bring something that they know would be good for them to eat as well. And safety is a really big concern for a lot of residents because of past experiences not knowing the language. Understand they may not feel comfortable providing information like email addresses or phone numbers. Be responsive to that. I've had a couple neighborhoods who are not comfortable having the police visit, and they'll make that clear. And I'm totally fine with that. I make sure that as we plot out the police visits, I do it with the community outreach person from the police, and we make sure. And every night that we've done National Night Out, we've had, it's kind of a dubious thing. It actually scares me, but Guardian One, which is the big King County helicopter, does big dips over. They know where the big parties are, and we create a map for them. If we know that somebody's not going to be comfortable with that, if somebody's expressed that, we make sure that they know not to go over that block. So as much information as you can possibly get to share with us is good. There's more in here about what kind of food to do. I think that potlucks are such a great way to go, and it's fun. In our neighborhood a couple of years ago, we had a dessert potluck and asked people to bring a dessert that they remembered fondly from childhood, and that stimulated so much conversation. And we had a couple of folks from Vietnam who brought something that nobody had ever tasted, and they explained what it was. So just make it as encouraging for that kind of thing as possible. Whenever possible, get compostable plates, cups, napkins. Those can go in your green bin. And I found that Cash and Carry actually has a lot of that. At this point, at least, we can still put that into compost.
And is that something that we're able to, the neighborhood association is able to provide to?
We can talk about that. Yes, I think it is.
Yeah. So what we're working on is being able to, at the neighborhood association, to foot the bill for the compostables for the party.
Yep. So if you are having a party and you know that you're going to be serving ice cream or something, you could get in touch with Cynthia and Tom and say, we're expecting 30 people and we need this many bowls and spoons. Yep. And then you can just tell your neighbors, they could just go, it goes right into the green bin, have a green bin accessible, and we always roll ours down and make sure that people know that they can put things in there. I'm gonna just leave the rest. I think there's so many things that you can think about. Really simple things like lemonade and cookies. It doesn't truly does not have to be elaborate for people to feel comfortable. You could do an icebreaker if you're comfortable with that. You can, let's see what else. Block history stories are really interesting. And as we go through this period of just intense transition in the city, having people who've lived on a block for a long time tell the story of the block is really powerful, because it's not only to honor the fact that they've been there and they've seen all this change, but it's also, you know, it never fully goes away. It's always there in some way. So especially I think for kids to hear some of the stories. And I know it's funny, in my neighborhood, the woman, there was a 98-year-old woman when we first moved in who lived across the street. She bought the house that we live in now years ago for her daughter to raise her family. And so we ended up in this house, and we heard stories about the house, and we heard about some things that they'd done to make it more comfortable for the kids. And it made our part of the neighborhood feel so much more rooted. And so anything like that, I think, is really valuable. For kids, there's chalk art, and I'm pretty sure that I'll be including packets, big things of street chalk when I send out the packets this year. So you've got that to play with. Make a banner or a mural with the kids. You can, if you've got your street closed off, you could do a little bike rodeo. You can do hula hoops, bubbles, maze with plastic tape. There's so many old-fashioned things that kids have never been introduced to. This would be a great time to have like a jacks tournament or something.
We have some fun with the increasing distance water balloon throw,
That would be great, yeah.
especially if it's sunny.
Yes, and people want to get it burst on them. So, other things you can do, you can have a cakewalk, share garden produce, plant exchange. Door prizes work surprisingly well in some neighborhoods. If you tell people that there's a door prize, they'll come. It's so funny. Some storytelling. Here's a water balloon fight. Things that you contribute to your community. You could do, one neighborhood that I know in Parkwood does a cleanup. Well, it's actually at the lake. They do a cleanup before they have their party. So they're just endless things, and you can just use your imagination. Again, I would really suggest don't overdo, because then it's not fun for you. And as a rather nervous host, I can say that it's much more fun to show up at your own party if you are not stressed out. So, yes.
I just wanted to add, our 2-block block party was also an opportunity last year to begin the Map Your Neighborhood process, which is about disaster planning. And the city has a, I don't know what you would call it, multiple page kind of booklet that has, where you can have everybody mapped out with their contact information, so you know who lives in what house. And then it also has some resources for putting signs in your window when there is a disaster, whether you need help or not. And trying to think of what else is in there, but and also instructions on how to find the gas mains and water mains and things that need to be turned off if there's a.
We actually have an emergency management coordinator now, Jason McMillan, who is taking that a step further, and he's moving into a Ready Shoreline program. And he's found that, I mean, it's a very useful thing, but people don't follow up on it unless they get the support. So if you live on a block that wants to get, in fact, with your block, you should have Jason come out, and it sounds like you're pretty far along with this, but.
Yeah, it'd be nice if he came out on our block party night.
It'll be a quick visit, but yes, I'll see if I'll try to remember to assign him to yours.
Do they have a CERT program here?
We do indeed. Yep, and Jason runs it. He came on a year ago yesterday. We celebrated his anniversary, and he's already had graduated 2 CERT classes. So we've got CERT and ACS, and we will be having an emergency preparedness fair at City Hall in October during Safety Month. So watch, there will be information about that goes out with National Night Out packets as well. I encourage you to do it. It really is fun.
Once again, do you have a list of, like, I just moved here from, I lived up in Edmonds for 21 years, and now I've moved here. I've been here for like 3 months. And so I'm meeting my neighbors as I walk my dogs. And whoever's out, I engage me, how you doing? Come so and so.
That's great.
New kid on the block. And, but I don't know somebody did mention that there was a party where they blocked the streets off, and I thought, oh, National Night Out.
Yep.
And,
As
but-
we get
but-
a little closer, my name and numbers on here,
Okay.
check in with me if nobody's approached you about doing that. And New Kids on the Block can have their own parties too. It's one way to get everybody to know you and your dogs.
Can I ask a question, just taking a poll here? How many people are on Facebook? Okay. And how many people are on Nextdoor?
I'm thinking of getting off. People yell at each other
Okay.
so much.
And then,
It's so sad.
and then how many people read the Shoreline Area News blog?
Oh, this, every day.
Daily,
That's the
okay,
newspaper.
daily?
The daily
Yeah.
email
Yeah.
newspaper.
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to be on any of those and you're not on them, to connect to Meridian Park Neighborhood Association, please see me after the meeting and we can get that handled.
Yeah.
Because it's a great way the way, we don't have a printed newspaper here in Shoreline. We have the Currents magazine, but that only has things from the city directly, city generated things rather than neighborhood generated things. So, we just would like everybody to be informed and invited. So I would love to have you guys get on one of the channels, if you like.
I hear you about Nextdoor.
Yeah,
I
Nextdoor.
somehow was inadvertently dropped, and it was the best day of my life. Just like, oh my gosh, civility is just a lost art. But
It's not a face-to-face thing, that's the main reason.
yes, people can be anonymous, that's true. I am always available, and I forgot to bring cards up, but if you wanna take, the handouts, it's got my contact information, and I obviously enjoy talking to people about this, so if you wanna find out if there's something going on in your neighborhood, or if you wanna get something going and need a little support, please feel free to reach out, and Cynthia
Yes,
can
I can
certainly.
support as well.
I think we might become victims of our own success here because we just keep growing by leaps and bounds, and it's just like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna keep up with all of this on National Night Out? But just have our spinach before we head out, I guess. It's really, it is amazing, and I have to admit, there was, at one point, I was over in the Inglewood neighborhood, and there were streets next to each other, and everybody was having their own block party, and the smell of roasting bratwurst, and it brought tears to my eyes, actually. I mean, it was really, next I had to figure out how to get out, but, because all the streets, all the trails were closed, but it really is, it's a very special night, and just being out, I mean, you could do it anytime you wanted, you could do it, and some people do their block parties in September when things get a little quieter after people return from summer vacation. But there is something really, really cool knowing everybody else is doing it that night.
We have the Paceline Apartments, we have the new one by the roller thing coming up, we have the one on 175th and 15th. What is the big thing coming out of the ground with the two cement pillars now?
know what that
I'm
is.
serious.
Yeah, I mean, that's not gonna be a gas station or
Oh,
a,
no.
you know,
Well, it
a
looks like a
7-Eleven.
garage, or it's not
Where's
a,
this, Tom?
It's
Just south of the pawn shop,
on the
Yeah,
right.
across
side.
from the
Oh, yes,
methadone place.
yes,
There are
that
two
is
great big things
weird.
coming out, it's like a 20-story building foundation.
I was walking on the trail yesterday with somebody from Public Works, and I'm like, what is this? And it's like, I don't know, so I will find out and let all of you know. I am really curious too.
I'd like to call the meeting to a close, the formal part of the meeting. People feel free to stick around and chat, because we promised this was a 7 to 8:30 meeting.
Okay.
So,
This is a general thing, I know this is off the topic, and I've mentioned this before and everything, and there's now more of an effort on the state for this, but if we could have more condos and not so many apartments or whatever, you get ownership, you get stability, people can have 30-year mortgages, they're not leaving all the time, that would greatly help the stability of our neighborhood. It would give our kids in their mid-20s or even 30s to have a chance to own something and not be forever subject to rapacious landlords like me. And, you know, so I wish that half of these things in the Paceline and some of the others were condos, like is the case with the one on the corner of Ashworth, 175th, that's a condo, $260,000, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. you could start there, you know, that was
Well,
amazing.
and with the state, changes in state law with the last session, it opens the door for that.
Yeah,
There was just some bizarre code around litigation and.
about the liability of the builders for 10 years. Somebody could say, there's a mouse in my soup, you know, and you'd have to redo the whole half of the building. It was ridiculous.
Yep.
So
So
it's
that
so
opens
tough
up.
on the young people these days anyway, with their student loans and their
Yep.
housing prices astronomical and all this. I got a kid in Vancouver, and it's hopeless in Vancouver for young people. I mean, to have any kind of life like previous generations have had. Children, own a house, own a car, you know.
Yeah, I know.
We're
But even the
digressing,
pri-
but
even the price of condos
yeah,
for
And the
people just
HOA
starting
fees.
out and retired folks as well like myself.
yeah.
You know, I'm renting just as, at barely what I can afford, and, but, you know, I'm on a fixed income. And, but like, you know, I just say, yeah, well, you should go and buy a condo, there's no way in hell I could afford a condo.
So then you tack on HOA fees.
And then you pay
Yes.
several $100 a
It's not the
month.
price of the condo necessarily,
Yeah.
sometimes it is, but then you have.
HOAs, yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah,
then
but-
you're at the whim, instead of just a bad landlord, you're at the whim of an HOA that has an unstable.
people.
Yeah.
I have a curiosity question, not related to anything to do with the association, but who's taking care of the horses? I have been curious.
You mean who puts the decorations?
Oh,
on?
yeah.
Various residents in Shoreline come and do things.
Oh, it's not just the
It's
same?
It's not the same people, and it's not any official thing, it's just.
The orange
Yeah,
stuff
what
on
was
there
that?
now is
Well,
for,
I
that
know
was for
gun violence, yeah, I
Oh,
for gun
okay, I didn't
violence.
know.
Yeah.
Those, at one point, those,
Explanation.
horses, those ponies down there had giant horsefly wings on them. That was
Right.
part of Somerset Arts Festival, so, yeah, lots of different things have happened with those ponies.
I'm just
I
glad
enjoy
that
it.
we tagged them, you know?
What's that?
I
Oh,
mean,
I
Oh, yeah,
know.
I know,
yeah,
yes.
really, we've been
Yeah.
lucky